Without question, one of the largest challenges as farmers for us is to pick the perfect day to plant corn. We never know exactly when do we pull the trigger. Let's take this spring, for example. It was warm really early. So on that from the April 15th time frame here in central Illinois, we had some 80-degree temperatures and some 70-degree soils. It was a perfect time to be running planters. We went ahead and fired the gun and started. And then about April 20th, we parked. And as hard as that is, I'd like to explain why we do that type of thing. It's never about the day we plant. This seed I'm holding in my hand is swollen up and is starting to take water through the pericarp. It's 36 hours after planting when a seed takes the water into the pericarp, and it's the temperature of that water that sets us up for the hoe season. So this plot is all about what style of corn you and I own at that time of year. And I want to make it very clear. It's not about Monsanto or Pioneer, Beck's, Channel, or name the many 30 different seed companies. It's about what you and I own at that given time and how we manage it. So at our farm, and for the last 20 years, as soon as we get our seed in-house, we will send it to a seed lab to get it checked for what we call saturated cold germ. Simply that means they will chill that seed for about 7 days at 50 degrees. Then on the 8th day, they warm it up to 80 and they count how many germ. It's different than the cold germ that's on the bag. Most of that cold germ is 95 and above. We're talking about real-time conditions, such as a field condition, and it's real time for what affects the stand. So as we get those numbers back, we use that knowledge then to know when to plant that specific hybrid and what day. Let me give you an example. This year, for instance, I had the lowest saturated cold germs I've ever had in all the years I've checked. Some of our corn come back at 62%. So in other words, 38 seeds out of every 100, when they were chilled for 7 days in 50 degrees, wet soils, and then warmed up, just didn't flat out grow. At the same time, I had corn in our stockpile in the seed house that was 95% different in cold germ. That's basically an Eskimo. You could plant that 95% saturated cold germ anywhere and it will grow. So on the 20th of April, I parked my planters. Looking ahead to that Saturday, Sunday, I saw some extremely low temperatures and rain. It's the combination of both that make Greg extremely nervous. In the case of 30 hours of planting this plot, on that Friday morning, on Sunday morning in here, we had 40.6 degree temperatures when it took its first drink, well below the 50 degrees that we're concerned about. So in this case, let's take a look to see what we have. The first two rows off here to my right were 89%, same genetics now. A different lot in the center here was 65. And then the corn here right to my left was 95. So we start here with an Eskimo, we have a Florida beach bum that will never like a cold drink, and then we have pretty much average state of the run at an 89 to 90% here along the grass. So let's take a closer look and see exactly how this plot grow and how these plants respond. The key for us as growers is it's never about when we get the lab results back of saying and calling up our seed supplier and saying, are you kidding me? We need to return this seed. It's a 65% cold germ. The corn I'm kneeling in here at 65% is my highest yielding genetics. I'm not about returning it at all. I'm all about Greg managing it so that first drink is in a 55 to 60 degree soil. So where it was 40 degrees on that Sunday morning when it took its first drink, you can see the effect. As we compare to the other rows, so these two rows I'm kneeling in at 65, right next to me over here is 95, there's 6,000 difference in emergence. And that 6,000 comes from here where we see we have some plants missing. And so this guy here is a classic. He is stalled out, and he had the double whammy. We had rain and cold temperatures. And that's when you don't sleep well, when you've got a lot of corn planted 30 hours ahead of a weather event. So in this case, he just flat out gave up, and he couldn't go on any further. Right next to him, we have a late emerger, a very common scenario. He's not going to ear. He's going to be much less in diameter than the plants that are around us. You look at this plant right here by my knee. In this case, this guy is off and running, and he's off to the races. This guy is going to be behind all year, and there's going to be a cost to that. I moved over just 2 rows to the west, and you can see here we have almost ideal picture-perfect stands. And so I get pretty excited when I see corn that's all at the same stage, realizing the competition for sunlight and water and moisture. As we go through the growing season here, everybody here is created equal. So once again, at a 95% saturated cold germ, we have a 33,000 stand compared right over 2 rows away where we had a 65%, where we had less than about 26 to 27,000. So once again, you and I own this. This is not where we can turn around and point fingers at our seed supplier. This is where Greg's got to step up. As hard as it is to park planters, we have to get it right. This early in the season is going to carry through all the way to harvest if we stumble. This is more like it. Look at the difference here when we're about 30 degrees warmer on soil temperatures. We have 100% of the plants emerged at the same time. Where we dropped 34,000, we have 34,000 plants in all 3 replications. The 89%, the 65% that was 6,000 less the last time has 34, and then behind me, the 95, once again, every plant grew. What a difference it makes when we position seed for success. A week later in our 65% cold germ trial, you can see that these late emergers are really starting to separate. 2 collar difference here, V3 versus V5. This is not going to be nothing more than a weed. Every year as farmers, we can always remember a weekend when we probably shouldn't have been planting corn. And for the 2017 growing season, that weekend would be that April 21st to the 23rd weekend where we got extremely cold temperatures with rain. And for our own farm, we try to empower ourselves with knowledge to know exactly what we're planting. What is the saturated cold germ of the seed that we're planting? Realizing that we buy from all the major OEMs, but not all corn is created equal. Some of the highest yielding corn at times will have some of the lowest saturated cold germs, which means where they put it in 50 degrees soil for 7 days in a lab and then warm it up to 80 and see out of 100 seeds how many grow. In this particular plot, you see some shorter corn, and then you, of course, see some taller corn behind me. In other words, it doesn't care if it takes a cold first drink. When we talk about cold first drink, we're talking about temperatures under 50 degrees. And so anytime it takes that in through the pericarp, it stuns the germ, and it's slow to react. Sometimes they don't show up at all, and other times they're really extremely late emergers. So this 99% corn, this shorter corn, has 35,000 plants when we planted it right into a cold drink. And it got down to about 43 degree soils at that 36 hours after planting. So we intentionally planted it so that pericarp would take that cold water through in 36 hours. We measured that water, it was about that 43 degrees. And it shocks that seed. But at the same time, we got 35 plants up with 2 late emergers, 2 of them that struggled. When we look at the taller corn behind this shorter statured corn, it's some of the highest yielding corn that we could purchase this year. At the same time, when we checked the saturated cold germ, it was the poorest. Does not mean we want to return it. It means that you and I, once we have that information, for example, it was a 65% saturated cold germ. 35 of 100 did not like a cold drink of water. And when we look at how many ears we have and what came up, there's only 26 28,000 ears compared to 33,000 ears. So there's 7,000 ears difference due to the fact that it didn't like the cold weather. So you and I need to empower ourselves. This is a sensitive subject. When we write large checks to seed companies, they get really tense as growers when we empower ourselves with these numbers. But you and I have to know, so we plan it accordingly. What should we have done? Waited about 5 days, and if we'd have planted this corn behind me into warm soils and it had taken a 60 to 62 degree drink, we'd have had a much different playing field. And so you and I, as we look at the end result here, will have no surprises when we look at the yield monitor when we come through with the combine.